the 15-minute city. Now, on the surface, it sounds amazing, right? It's this urban planning dream where everything you could possibly need is just a quick walk or bike ride away. But for a growing number of people, this isn't a dream at all. It's a code word for something way more sinister, something like climate lockdowns and total government control. So let's get into it and figure out what this whole debate is really about. Okay, so the core idea, which was first laid out by urbanist Carlos Moreno, is all about ditching our old car-centric model. You know, the one that separates where we live from where we work, shop, and hang out. The goal here is to create these really vibrant, hyperlocal neighborhoods that are built for people, not cars. The idea is that they'll be more sustainable, healthier, and, frankly, just a whole lot easier to live in. And to make this happen, Moreno zeroed in on these 6 essential functions of daily life. Proponents like Paris's mayor Anne Hidalgo are all in on this. They're trying to make every single one of these things accessible right around the corner, which they hope will radically slash the need for cars and those soul-crushing long commutes. But this is exactly where things start to get really complicated. Is this whole thing a blueprint for some kind of urban paradise, a throwback to those tight-knit communities, or is it actually a framework for a digital prison where our movements are tracked and our freedoms are slowly chipped away? That is the big question we're going to unpack right now. Now, before we dive headfirst into all the heavy critiques, let's give the other side its due and look at the strongest case for the 15-minute city. Because proponents will tell you this isn't just about making life more convenient for the rich. They see it as a powerful tool for social equity. The argument basically goes like this. When you build neighborhoods that are packed with amenities, shops, parks, doctors' offices, you create opportunities. And when those neighborhoods are accessible to everyone, not just people who can afford to own and run a car, you start to level the playing field. Let's see what that actually looks like in the real world. Okay, so check out this contrast. Studies have shown that in a place like New York City, which already kind of functions like a bunch of 15-minute cities stitched together, even high-poverty areas like Jackson Heights are these vibrant hubs. They pull in people from all different income levels. Now, compare that to Washington, D.C.'s less walkable, high-poverty neighborhoods like Anacostia. They are often what you'd call food deserts with way fewer amenities, and that effectively isolates the residents, cutting them off from the kinds of social connections that are so crucial for getting ahead in life. So, that's the dream scenario. But critics jump in pretty quick to point out what they see as a massive flaw in the logic. Can every single neighborhood really have everything? This question of pure practicality is the first major roadblock for the whole concept. And here's the crucial distinction they make, the difference between generic amenities and specialized ones. I mean, sure, you can put a grocery store, a park, and a cafe in every neighborhood. That's easy enough. But what about a university? Or a world-class hospital that does cancer research? What about a major corporate headquarters or an opera house? Those kinds of places need the population and the resources of an entire city just to stay afloat. And this quote from O the Urbanity really just nails it. The whole point of a city, the magic of it, is that incredible concentration of unique, specialized things you just can't get anywhere else. And critics argue that if you start limiting your world to a 15-minute bubble, you completely miss out on the very thing that makes a city so great in the first place. And that leads us right into the second major critique, which is honestly even sharper. Even if you could build these perfect little neighborhoods, who would actually get to live in them? Urban designer Jay Pitter makes a powerful point here. You can't just drop a utopian model on top of cities that are already deeply divided by race and class. There's a very real fear that this whole approach just ignores these long histories of urban inequity and could, ironically, end up making those divisions even worse. And urbanists Carlo Ratti and Richard Florida, they take it even one step further. They basically see these plans as a dream come true for the well-to-do urban gentry. The fear is that as soon as you start improving neighborhoods with nice amenities and fancy bike lanes, they'll become magnets for the wealthy, and that just triggers a wave of gentrification that prices out the original residents, the very people who were supposed to be helped. So, if we boil down the fears around inequality, it looks like this. Instead of creating a more fair city, critics are worried the 15-minute city just becomes another luxury good. It could end up trapping the poor in under-resourced neighborhoods, while the rich get to enjoy their walkable, amenity-filled enclaves, which would only deepen the very segregation this whole thing was supposed to fix. And that, right there, brings us to the most explosive, most controversial part of this entire debate. This is where the conversation shifts from simple urban planning to something that feels a lot more like a political thriller, the fear of control. This quote from Jordan Peterson, it just perfectly captures the raw fear that's driving so much of the opposition. See, for them, the concern isn't really about having walkable neighborhoods. It's about the potential for tyrannical bureaucrats to use this pleasant-sounding idea as a cover to restrict people's fundamental freedom of movement. And what adds a whole lot of fuel to this fire is the very vocal support from the World Economic Forum. As soon as the WEF starts framing the 15-minute city as a critical tool for fighting climate change, it raises massive red flags for anyone who's already suspicious of a top-down globalist agenda trying to control local life. For a lot of people, this isn't just some abstract theory. They point to a very real plan in Oxford, England, as Exhibit A, proof that their worst fears are already starting to come true. So let's break down this plan that caused such a massive uproar. The proposal was to divide the city into 6 different zones. Then they'd put electronic gates and smart cameras on key roads to monitor traffic between them. Get this. Residents would have to register their cars with the council and would only be given a limited number of passes, just 100 per year to drive through these filters. And if you go over your limit, you're looking at a hefty 70-pound fine for every single time you do it. Now, of course, city officials say this is purely about reducing traffic, but for opponents, it looks and feels like a trial run for something much, much bigger. It connects directly to fears of what they call climate lockdowns, where environmental goals become the justification for unprecedented new restrictions on our personal freedom. So, after all that, what are we supposed to make of this? The fight over the 15-minute city is pretty clearly about a whole lot more than just zoning laws and bike lanes. It really boils down to 2 completely opposite visions for the future. On one side, you have this hopeful vision of convenience, community, sustainability, and equity. And on the other, you have these deep-seated fears of control, segregation, a loss of basic freedom, and widening inequality. It's a fundamental clash over what we want our cities, and maybe even our societies, to be. At the end of the day, this whole debate is like a mirror. It's reflecting the really deep divisions running through our society right now. How much or how little we trust our governments, how we balance our individual freedoms against the needs of the community, and really what kind of future we even want to build. And so that leaves us with the big question. Is the 15-minute city a practical, inspiring blueprint for a better way to live? Or is it a utopian dream that, once it hits the real world, risks becoming a dangerous tool for inequality and control? The answer probably depends on who you ask, and maybe more importantly, who you trust to build it.